Well, let us proceed and maybe we can finish this thing in 15 minutes. Right. So, People Under the Stairs is what I was talking about. The movie, basically. So it was a pretty cool movie. And in 1992, Universal got the sets from the movie, the actual set pieces that were used when they made the film, and brought them over to Florida and put them in the sound stage. There's several sound stages, but one of the sound stages, and set up sets to recreate the look of People Under the Stairs. And this is how they built this haunted house. And then, of course, they had characters interacting with the guests as the evil, sick, twisted mommy and daddy, and all of the creepy, mutated, deformed, inbred freaks who lived in the basement, and in the wainscoting, and in the woodwork, and in the attic, or wherever they would go running and scuttling about between and behind and under the walls. Very interesting. Now, some of you may recall another house called People Under the Stairs. Again, talking about connections, that appeared a few years ago in 2006. Well, if you remember that house, I'm terribly sorry. But let me tell you one thing. The original People Under the Stairs, there was no comparison whatsoever. The first People Under the Stairs was one of the most intense, grueling houses they've ever had at Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights. It was amazingly brutal. And what I hear is true. Maybe they're going to do something similar this year in brutality. But, for example, when Daddy went down there into the dungeons and ripped open human beings and took out their flesh and threw it to his strange mutated offspring, the bits of meat would fly and stick to the walls a little bit before it slid down, and bits of blood would splash out and get on the guests. And it wasn't water from a squirt gun. It was sticky and red. It wasn't real blood from meat, of course, but it was probably something with corn syrup and food coloring, but you should not have worn a white shirt that night. It was quite startling, and that's something I don't think they'll ever do again, because, well, they won't. But these are early years where they hadn't quite thought through some of the more interactive, let us say, elements. But it was amazing, and it really was terrifically done, and it really had the intensity and violence and thrill of the original movie, and they captured that very well. So if you remember the more recent abortion they called People Under the Stairs Under Construction, don't confuse it with the original, because that was amazing. Right. So those were the two houses. Dungeon of Terror, just as good, if not a little better than the first time around, and People Under the Stairs. Two awesome houses. But that wasn't all, of course. No, no. They didn't have something going on every single part of the street, but they had some pretty good shows, and they upped the entertainment quite a bit, even without all that other stuff. Oh, there was, of course, some guys with chainsaws chasing people somewhere in the park, because that happened every year. There was a rat lady somewhere in the park, actually back in the dungeon again, because that happened. They also had this creepy little guy with roaches called the Roach Man, and he would have them scary all over himself in his mouth. And let me tell you something, that really, worse than the rat lady. And the rat lady didn't really bother me. I think they're kind of cute. But the roach thing, I have a problem with roaches, because the smell of a cockroach, I mean, it's like a cross between burnt rubber and iodine or something. I really can't explain. I mean, it's its own smell, basically. It just makes me heave. It's the smell more than anything else that gets to me. I can't stand that, the odor. And to see someone having them go into this, yeah, awful. Besides, he was a grubby, nasty-looking fellow who looked, like, he kind of made Captain Spaulding look clean. And I'm not talking about Groucho Marx, Captain Spaulding. I'm talking 100,000 Corpses, Captain Spaulding, for those of you who don't know. But they had quite a bit of interesting things going on those 5 nights. They brought in some rather interesting entertainment, including a concept which came from outside of Universal, which had been done, a concept which had appeared in monster truck rallies and demolition derbies. It was this huge mechanical thing called Robosaurus, and this towering thing, like a giant mechanical dinosaur, would come down and pick up, old cars and trucks and carry them up and go munch, 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 and then drop them, and it would have fire pouring out of its nostrils like a fire-breathing mechanical dragon. It was kind of a weird show. Basically, let's bust up some cars and blow things up real good. And I suppose if you had a 6-pack of Coors and you were a redneck, you'd really think that was an awesome show. But even if you weren't, it was still pretty good. But it was really made for, like, the NASCAR monster truck audience. But it was brought into Halloween Horror Nights because it was, I guess, some sort of dinosaur, like, some cross between a nitro-burning funny car and Godzilla. If you want to think of it like that. And other new entertainment that year, well, there's one big, fat, wonderful piece of new entertainment, but let's save off on that for a moment. They also brought back Thunderdome again, and they had some of the other little shows like this, and they had the costume contest again, once again, and they also did something they really never did again that year. They thought, let's incorporate Halloween into some of the attractions. Well, one of the things they did, and they did this a couple of times, of changing the names of the attractions for Halloween Horror Nights. So they would call, instead of calling it E.T. the Extraterrestrial, they'll say Alien Forest. And they did that 93 and 94, I think, as well. But it was in 92 when they actually tried to change up the attractions a little bit and make them a part of the event by putting what would now be called characters into the attractions. And they did this in 2 attractions, even though they had changed the name of a couple of attractions. In 2 attractions in particular that year, they added in. Now, it just so happened that Universal had released the Sam Raimi Dark Man shortly before this, and so that strange, disfigured superhero, Dark, with the hat and the, he was around in the King Kong attraction, stalking through the streets of New York, up in the tram with you. I mean, he was all over the place. Darkman was haunting. In addition to the actual ride with King Kong, you had Darkman to worry about. And then, in Back to the Future, of all places, while you were in the queue waiting to go into the ride, strange, weird, freak, mad scientists, sort of like Doc Brown on methamphetamines, with a lobotomy, gone insane and going to kill you, would show up and start freaking out, and evil mad scientist type figures would attack you while you're going through that, just in the queue line. And they made some kind of weird, I think they called it Voyage into the Unknown instead of Back to the Future. That was the sort of thing they did. So you had that sort of, tweaking the queue areas and the rides and attractions to make it more Halloween. But then the big news in entertainment was a whole new show. Well, the first year they had that show by the Bates Motel with Beetlejuice and all of that. But this year they had a new idea. You see, a sequel to Bill and Ted's Big Adventure had recently come out called Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Now, although that was not a Universal picture, somehow Universal acquired the right to use the Bill and Ted characters for a Halloween show at Halloween Horror Nights. and history was made. In 1992, Bill and Ted's Halloween Adventure debuted on the Western stunt show stage. And so you go into the show where there's an old Western town, which is how it was set up in those days, and the cowboy comes out on his horse, and he's all dressed in black, so you know he's a bad guy. It was Black Bart. He was the first in a whole line of evil villains who would torment Bill and Ted. And Bill and Ted would show up in their time machine, and they have to help the sheriff stop that Black Bart, because he's bad 'un. And so they have this confrontation. Eventually they decide to use a time machine, and they summon Doc Brown in his DeLorean. So Doc Brown and Bill and Ted, as time-traveling heroes, combat Black Bart, but somehow inadvertently summon forth not help from various points in the future, but actually the worst possible people from the future to arrive in the Old West. Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and the Terminator. I'll be back. And so these guys terrorize Bill and Ted and the whole town until finally they get some rock and roll pop musicians come from the future to help them. MC Hammer, Madonna, who wants to Vogue, and the one who saves the day with his glorious music, Elvis, with the sound of celestial choirs. The king has come. And yes, it's Elvis, but it's old fat Elvis. Nevertheless, it's Elvis. And somehow they save the day, and the Terminator and Jason and Freddy and Black Bart are defeated, and all reigns supreme. And it's Wild Stallions and Excellent and Party On Dudes and Station and all of that. And it was the first Bill and Ted adventure at Halloween Horror Nights. And of course, we've had Bill and Ted at Halloween Horror Nights every year since, and we will do so again this year when another time traveler will join the cast along with Bill and Ted, just as the very first Doc Emmett Brown helped them. This year, the greatest time traveler in the history of popular fiction and science fiction, the greatest time-traveling hero of them all, whose adventures began in jolly old England 47 years ago, in 1963, the year I was born. The Doctor. That's right, the Doctor, Dr. Who. He'll be showing up to hang out with Bill and Ted. Yup, blimey. And bow ties are cool. Yeah, so, and which Doctor? I'm not sure if it's going to be the 10th Doctor or the 10th and the 11th Doctor. But we shall see. So that will be awesome. But yeah, it all started with Bill and Ted and Doc Brown, and now it'll continue. The grand traditions. Ooh. The only other thing I need to remind is that, of course, just like the first year, they still had a big stage where they have bands with music. And what I remember most about that, I don't remember what band was on the stage, but I remember who the host was, because that, to me, a child of the 70s, was awesome. It was Wolfman Jack! Yeah! The legendary Wolfman Jack, DJ himself, with his beard and hair, his guy. Ow! Wolfman Jack was there in 1992. Now that was frickin' awesome for me. So yeah, you never know who you might see at Halloween Horror Nights. And that was 1992, one of the greatest early years of Halloween Horror Nights. So yeah, Bill and Ted first started having excellent Halloween adventures. The debut of the Robosaurus. We had Wolfman Jack. We had People Under the Stairs, 2 houses, twice as many houses as the year before. It was frickin' awesome. Next time, 1993, and maybe 94 as well. Until then, be excellent one to another, and party on dudes. Oh, party on dude. No, that's right. not party on dudes. Well, for some of you, yeah.